Hello, my friends. How are you? Another month has come and gone. I cannot believe it. Um, if you were here with me last time, thanks for being here. I went live on Zoom versus my trusty old StreamYard, and I ended up having to go live on August 1st. I was trying to go on the 31st. And I've just got to say, I'm glad that I am back on StreamYard. Zoom is great for all the things, but not my favorite for streaming on LinkedIn. Good morning, James. Good to see you. I think you'll be excited about my win for the month. I always share my wins and my fails every single month. So I'm just going to dive right into that since you're here, James. My win is my garden. My garden finally gave me a tomato, and I'm starting to understand why everybody has like loads of tomatoes when they are first gardening, because that's literally the only thing that survived in my garden this year. So, but I'm very proud of it because we had a move in the middle of trying to plant the garden because I started them out as little seeds. And so, you know what? We got big tomatoes, we got a couple little cherry tomatoes, and I'm just happy that something grew in my little garden, and I'm excited to try again next year. James, I'm excited to go watch your fall cover crop thing that you just posted. I just barely saw it when I signed on to LinkedIn this morning. So that is my win of the month. Please feel free to share yours in the comments. I always love to celebrate with you. My fail for the month was my internet. We live in a beautiful place with horrible internet service. And unfortunately, up until this point, it's been holding strong. And this was the month where it failed me. It was about an hour before a conversation with somebody I'd never met, and I went to log on and it was not working. And so I hurried in my car because we also don't have like data, so I can't get on my phone. So I hurried in my car and I drove into town where I was hoping there was going to be a little bit more service. There was not. The library was like internet down, the coffee shop internet down. Anyway, so by the end of my driving around trying to find a place for internet, it was too late. I felt horrible, and I couldn't even get a message to who I was supposed to meet before the meeting started. So that was a huge fail. I hate doing that to people. It was like, and so once I finally got service about 20 minutes later, I messaged her and it was all good. But it was just one of those, like, there's some good things about living out in the middle of nowhere, and there's some not so great things. Let's see. Matt says we grew veggies with each of our kids when they were little. Loved it as an activity with them to do. Matt, that is exactly why I think some of mine did not make it to. Hi, Danny. Good to see you. I think that's exactly why my tomatoes are the only thing that survived, because we had a little bit of help in the garden, and there was like a whole bunch of little sprouts right here and there was nothing here. And anyways, it was still very fun though. The whole point was to kind of just experiment. So again, like my whole thing about 2023 has been failing. That's been the goal, is to fail at things. And so we failed at a lot of the vegetables that we tried to plant in our garden. But luckily, the tomatoes came through, and it was really fun to pick those with my son and be like, "Oh, look, we did this from seed." And so it was good. So thanks to James for helping me get through my seedlings were leggy. So we're going to start into navigating unpredictable schedules and tips for staying sane. So I'm curious, those of you that are joining live, do you work a regular 9 to 5 job? Or I'm going to add, do you have a spouse who works a 9 to 5 job? So my husband, as many of you know, my mouth is getting really dry, sorry. My husband used to be in the Army, and so the job that he had in the Army was very much not a 9 to 5. Like, he would leave for PT in the morning at 5 a.m., and some days I wouldn't see him until 10 p.m. And other days he would walk in at 10 a.m. and be done with his workday. And I it was hard and continued to be hard. Um, let's see, James says, "More like a 7 to 7 job." Yes. But so my husband's schedule was all over the board, and I was like, "Okay, as long as we get through, like, these army years, like, it'll be okay." And then I started talking to other friends of mine. I have a really good friend who, her husband's a surgeon, and it's the same thing. When I'm talking to her, she's like, "Yeah, I don't know if he's working, when he's off, depending on the surgery," that kind of thing. And then, a lot of my family is first responders. So again, I never know when they're working. I never know when I should call. I never know, if they're sleeping because 'cause they've been working all night. And actually, one of our good friends, she, shared her Google Calendar with me because I kept inviting them to things when he was working, and she's like, "I have a Google Calendar, can I share it with you?" It's like, "Yes, please." So, navigating jobs that are, like, their schedules aren't set is very stressful and hard on the person working it, and I think hard on the family and the spouse and whoever is supporting them. So, for a lot of years, I was, kind of at the mercy of whatever my husband's schedule was, and so navigating that has, I guess, been I mean, I've had to figure out some, like, unique ways to structure my work and my business. Because I work for myself, it also makes it extremely hard because I can move things around. I can, stop working when he comes home for a second, start working. And it makes it hard to kind of keep track of everything. So there's a couple of things that we got put in place that have helped a lot. And I wanted to share if, like me, you might have to navigate some of these unpredictable schedules. I will also add, I've been working at home with my children, and that first year of life with little babies, unpredictable, and tips for staying sane, like, I don't think you stay sane the whole first year of little baby, but their schedules are just, like, so they change all the time that this was also kind of some way that I, like, navigated that first year. Emily, good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're here. So you don't have a 9 to 5 and your husband has a seasonal job. So you understand completely. Okay, so first of all, my agenda for today is just we're sharing our wins and our fails. I'm going to show you how I keep everyone in my house informed, how I stay on task, and then what I do when it all hits the fan, because it does and it will. And yes, just some things I've picked up when that happens. So I would love to hear your questions and thoughts as we go through it, and anything that you've picked up too, as far as like navigating forward. So, Ellen Michael, so good to see you from Washington State. Is it rainy there today? We have a rainy day here in Tennessee, and I know up there it's usually rainy. So, okay. So, tip number one, make your work visible. This is so, so important because some days my husband will be like, "Hey, let's go do this." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great. Get in the car, let's go." Other days he'll say, "Hey, like I have my friend just asked me if I can, I don't know, take him to go see a car or something like that." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like I have this and this and this and this and this and this and this." And I started to realize how unfair that was to him because he only sees me and my computer. He doesn't see the long, long list in my head of all the things that I have to get done, the deadlines that I'm trying to meet, all of that. And so we finally came up with an idea of one of those like huge whiteboards, like it takes up my whole wall. That's how big it is. And on there, I have all of the work that I'm trying to get done, even if it's not today that I'm trying to get it done. It's just like these are the projects I'm working on for the clients that I'm working on. These are when like just kind of my brain dump to do list. And it lives on my wall. So if he walks into my office and he sees it completely chock full, he's not going to ask for too much. And if he doesn't, then we can kind of have a conversation. So, the other thing that we did that's made a huge difference, and I'm sure so many of you that have worked from home this whole time have done this, and I'm a little late to the game, but my like call calendar of like what calls I have when lives in the kitchen. I had it in my office for a long time for myself to see, and then I realized, like, "Oh, everybody should be able to see this." Like, this is way more helpful when they know that I'm on a call at 10 o'clock. So, we have that out in the kitchen, I update it out there. So again, a big whiteboard, a nice calendar, and you can kind of make that work more visible for everybody in the house. Um, my big do not do for this that I've done, and I'm learning, do not put it a million places, because what I was doing was I had it in the kitchen, and I had a calendar in my office, and I had a planner, and having it 3 places at once and on my Google Calendar, having it all of those places was horrible. I never updated it all over the place. So now I have my Google Calendar, I have the kitchen calendar, and my to-do list, and my Notion to-do list. That's it, which still kinda sounds like a lot now that I say it out loud, but having it too many places, you're never gonna update it. Just try to have a space where everybody can see exactly, well, not exactly, but generally how much is on your plate, what you're doing. My other thing for this, on your list, have the annoying household things. So the calling the doctor, the finding a pediatrician, the I don't know, we have to send in tax paperwork, things like that that just kind of live in your brain. Put it on your whiteboard as if it's a client. For me, that's how I've done it. It's been huge because that falls into my next point, which is make sure when you're prioritizing your tasks that you include your family and that you like make a list of what's most important. Matt says, that is my current problem too. Too many places for my schedule. Yes. I do this all the time. I swear I have to remind myself of that same thing every 3 months. I'm like, "Okay, we've gotten too many places. Let's simplify." So my talking simplifying, my goal for my to-do list every day is I stand in front of that big old whiteboard and I list it out from 1 to 5. I've found that that's, like, realistically how many I can do, how many things I can tackle, is 1 to 5. And that way, when I get the emails that say, "Oh, can you just do this real quick? Oh, can you do that?" I look at my whiteboard and I go, "Oh, but I gotta do this. Let's just add it to the whiteboard." Or it helps me stay on track so that I'm not letting those little things kind of pop in, to include like family things. Like if somebody comes in and needs me to call on something, I go, "Oh, well, you know what? I'll call after that task," or whatever. So it kind of helps me stay on track, because as a mother or as a parent or as a human, I think that there's a lot of times where it's like, oh, the dishes need to be done, the laundry needs to be switched, all of these things that can kind of just like interfere with your workday when you work from home and when you have a schedule that's kind of all over the place, where it's like, okay, technically, I guess I could stop and do that. Stay focused, my friends. Try to make that list of 1 to 5 things, and once that's done, then we can kind of, like, put some other tasks on the board, on our plate, all of those things. So, I also do a thing of, like, things that have to be done are in one color, and then things that can kind of, take a back seat are in another color. So, when I'm sure if anybody has military family, you will understand this, but when my husband was in the army, we had a situation where, he left completely unannounced. Like, they called him at 10 o'clock, he was gone at 2 o'clock, and we didn't know how long he was gonna be gone, we didn't know where he was going. Um, and from that experience came a lot of, I was very bad about, like, if it doesn't have to be done right now, I'm not doing it, because who knows when they will just whisk you away again. And I had to get more, those priorities of those tasks helped me be like, "Okay, here's what I need to do, and I'm gonna do one of those don't have to do right now tasks, and then I can enjoy him if he comes home through the door at 10 o'clock in the morning. But the military is it kind of messes with your brain because it's like, okay, well, they're here now, but if they're going to leave in 5 minutes and who knows when they're coming back, you put off a bunch of things that you should be doing. I know it's not just me. I had a friend who was a school teacher who had they had the same problem where she was like, "Well, I guess, like, I'll do that later because you never know." And it was really, really hard. So having those priorities of those tasks and knowing, "Here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to do so that I'm not going to be super overwhelmed, and then here's the nice to do if he's still gone at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I can still, um, you know, still do the things that need to be done." Okay, James has a suggestion. He says, "My wife and I do a quarterly data dump where we go through a list of topics. Love Dave Crenshaw. It helps us clear our minds and list out all the to-dos." This is brilliant marriage advice right here, James. I feel like this is so smart. Um, I'm gonna have to go look at Dave's course and do that and I like that it's quarterly because we have tried weekly meetings and I feel like we're always like, meh, meh, we're fine, we're fine, we're fine because we've got littles and it's chaotic in our home. So I like this idea of doing it quarterly. That feels realistic. So, and that actually leads me to my third tip, which is staying realistic. So, on both fronts, like when you're adding all of your to-dos and you're like, I gotta do all these things. And then on the other, where it's like, well, I'm only gonna do the most pressing things. There's a happy medium there. And for myself, like I said, five to-do items. Like that seems to be my sweet spot of like, I'm staying on top of my things, but I'm not neglecting the things that I need to do. So if you have any other suggestions like James, please drop them in the chat. Oh, James, I'm also curious how you, and this is completely side note, how you stay on top of like planning for your garden and things like that. Because that's a lot of work, like outside housework. We just recently got into a home, and there's so much to do. It's so overwhelming. And I'm trying to figure out like a good way to keep those like in my radar but not completely consume me. Maybe it's a quarterly thing like you're saying. So, my third point of staying realistic and doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. I would also say the big thing for me, so a lot of times when I was home alone with my little one, not knowing when my husband was going to be coming home, I would I'd make sure we were outside for at least an hour in the morning and the afternoon. And I would um, do little spurts of work, which is really hard because it's like, okay, I'm going to get this one done, then we're going to go do this, then I'm going to get this one done, and I'm going to do this. And a lot of days I would get to the end of the day and I would be like, oh my gosh, like I did nothing. The house feels messy. I feel like I have a million things to do at work because I do. There's always a million things to do. And I would go back to my list and making sure I had a list of like what I had done that day was huge. I think I've heard this before called a done list, where you see everything that you did that day. That was huge for me to stay motivated, stay consistent, and like keep up with these systems that I had in place for making my life a little less chaotic. Because once I realized, like, no, I'm still doing things, it just doesn't feel the same as when you clock in at 9 and you work until 3 or 5 or whatever, and you clock out and you're like, man, I had a good day at work. You oftentimes, when you're in charge of your own schedule, when it's unpredictable, it feels like you're never doing enough or you're doing too much, or like it's really hard to find that like good, like workflow. So for me, creating some sort of list that was like, here's what I did today, helped me see that I'm doing a good job, I'm handling these things. And I would say also on that note of like keeping that list to make sure you include the family things that you've also done as well. So let's see, James says, Oh, growveg.com has a yearly subscription for a gardener planner. You know, I'm going to go get that. Thank you for sharing. Um, okay, so all of that to say, if you are like me and have to navigate somebody else's schedule that's unpredictable or your own schedule that can be unpredictable, hang in there. You got this. We will all share together some good tips. And when my third final point of what to do when it all hits the fan is just know that you're not alone and that you're doing better than you probably think you are. Like I was saying about my husband deploying out of nowhere. And then also, we've just moved so many times that our schedule has changed so many times. The biggest tip for that for me was having something that I knew I was going to do every day with work and with my family. So I know every single day this one thing is going to get done at work no matter what. And then I know for sure I'm always going to do um, the bedtime routine with my kids. Like that's one thing. And sweep my floors because I really hate when the floors are like covered in things. So knowing like, okay, here's what I'm going to do at my house every day to keep that clean and also at my work to keep that clean had helped me when we were in survival mode in multiple different times. So anyway, I am so glad that you all were here to join me today. Thank you for jumping in with your tips and your tricks. James, I'm definitely going to go over and look at Dave Crenshaw's LinkedIn course and pull that idea. He's brilliant. There's already things that he's taught about. If you guys haven't seen his course, I highly recommend it. He also talks about switch tasking, which is been huge in time blocking. So for me, my calendar is completely covered with things that I have to do, which helps my Google Calendar so that people can't schedule over that time when I send them Calendly links. It appears as if it's a meeting. And that has been huge for me, making sure I guard my time to get things done. So anyway, thank you so much, Emily. So good to see you. Good luck with your stuff that you've got going on today. I think you mentioned. And James, thank you so much for being here and suggesting those resources. So I will see you at the end of September on StreamYard because I love StreamYard and will never use Zoom again to live stream. And yes, like you're saying, Ellen, don't switch task, which is hard for me, especially when I've got so much going on. Um, like creating those blocks of time is huge. So, last thing from Matt, he said we had a gentleman named Jason on our podcast last year. He advocated blocking focus time. Okay, I'm going to go look into that too, using a program called brain.fm to block out distractions. That would be helpful. Okay, I'm looking into that. Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ella Michael, for being here. Happy anniversary. And I will see you guys next month.